Okay, so let's have a look at the editing process for these images. So I've got my image selected in Lightroom. So here's the shot that I want to use, and you've got the light and assistant there in the shot, and here is the clean plate that I took immediately after. So handheld, little bit of movement there. The other issue with something like this is you've got if it's very windy, you've got clouds that may be moving, and you've also got the water that's constantly changing. But I think we can blend it in pretty well, so I'm going to give it a go. So a couple of basic edits. I've done a custom white balance, and that's basically I've used my color picker on an area of water, so like a nicely exposed part there, and so that's given me a nice white balance. You can see the warmth in Aloha's face, and that's caused by the fact that I do have a gel there over the speed light. And then I've just opened up the shadows a little bit, so let me just show you before. So just like bringing those up a little bit there, and I've just made sure that there's a good black. So holding down the Option or Alt on a PC, bringing in the black, and I've just given this one a little dook of clarity there. So I'm pretty happy with that. Once I've got those settings, what I'm going to do is select the next image, the one that I took immediately after that doesn't have the assistant, select them both and sync the two. So that's going to make sure that I copy all the settings from this image to be the same as this image. Now, the only difference between this image and this image is that this has the figure lit and this one doesn't. So the exposure of the sky and everything else should be fairly similar. So what I'll do now is select them both, edit, and I'm going to open as layers in Photoshop. And so that allows that, what that does is it tells Photoshop to stack these two images as layers in Photoshop. So we'll go to Photoshop. All right, so here's the two images in Photoshop. So I've got the lit and the one that isn't lit, and you can see that they're like slightly out, because now this works so much better with a tripod. So because I was handheld, there is just a kind of like a slight shift there from the before and after. So what I'm going to do is have with both images selected, so both layers are selected, I go to edit, auto align layers, and select auto. Okay, and so what that's done is Photoshop has magically aligned, so you can see the horizon line does not move, but what you can see is that the ocean is a little bit different. So let's have a crack at taking out the assistant in this shot. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a layer mask, and I'm going to have my foreground color set to black. So black will reveal what's underneath. So if I brush on, soft brush, zero hardness, and I'm going to come in and I've got my flow. I just want things to move along a little bit quicker for the example. So I'll set my flow to about 35 and just come in and brush on, and you can see just like magic that's doing an okay job. And you can see that there is a slight variation in exposure just in that time. So if you've got a soft brush, you can kind of feather in the edit here, just making sure that there's no sort of telltale signs of my edit. And if there's a mistake, I can also just come back and brush with white. So let's say if I didn't want to remove that, I come back, white brings it back. So let's go to black, All right. And now I'm coming in, and you can see what's happening here is we've got the ocean is slightly different. Obviously, the waves are going to be moving a lot more. So if I'm very careful, I think I can almost like feather in the difference and pretty much blend it in. So like I don't think anyone's really going to notice that that's what has happened. And you can kind of do a bit of a blend there, and I think it looks okay. Unless you were there, you're not going to be able to really tell the difference unless you're one of those. There, I think it blends in. So it's just finding like a natural point where you can blend the two, the waves in there. And just like spending time, but like that took no time at all. And so you've got before and after, and obviously if you were doing it for reels, you would take the time to just make sure that the alignment was looking a lot better. And then like to take this to the next level, you could work on some extra burning and dodging, and maybe add some more toning. But I just wanted to show you that quickly for this example here. All right, so next up there is the image that I shot where I was shooting for skin tone using available light. So I've got a backlit image. So here it is without any lighting. This is what the image looked like. And that's exposing for the background. So I've got f11 1/200th of a second ISO 100. So you can see that he is very backlit. I could probably rescue this image. It's amazing how much detail you can pull out of shadows. So have a look at that, and you can see that I've managed to retain detail in the background, and also just by using that simple shadow slider, I've managed to bring in detail in the face, and it actually looks pretty good. So just adding a bit of black, and that's the thing that I always say, if you want, shoot for detail in the highlights. So we've got detail in the sky, and it's amazing how much you can pick up from the file if it's a raw file and correctly exposed. So let's have a look. We've got before, no lighting, after. Now the difference is when it's lit, you get shape, like a nicer look to the image. You also, the other thing that happens when it is lit correctly is that you'll get less noise in the highlights. So let's just come up and have a look at the noise that we pick up, but hopefully I can also come in and even rescue that by, let's try color noise first. So let's have a look. So we've got before, after, and just by lifting the color noise, that's made a huge difference. And I can also just add a little bit of luminance, and that's looking pretty good. The thing that I don't like about just shooting available light is you do get all these extra shadows that you pick up that you wouldn't see if this was being shot the fill flash. So that's the big difference. But occasionally there's that killer frame where the flash didn't go off, or you didn't have time to light it with flash. So this technique works really well. So that's exposing for the background, and using editing to bring in the details, and particularly being really aggressive with the shadow slider, upping the exposure a little bit, and then making sure that because that tends to flatten things when you open the shadows, so making sure that you're bringing in the black. You can probably bring in a bit more white just to make it pop. So you've got before and after. So that's one way to do it. the other way, and it's a completely different look, and it's kind of more, you see this a lot in fashion magazines as well, where they expose for the skin tone and let the background go. So in this instance, I've shot 4 skin tones. So it's f4, ISO 100, 1/125th of a second, whereas the image that I shot, my base exposure, f11. So that's 3 stops difference. But what's really cool is when you're shooting in RAW, you can pretty much pick up that difference in the RAW file. It's actually there. So let's have a look. There is our, that's the adjustment. That's the before. So basically what I've done is just drop the exposure by about 2.5 stops. That brings in all the detail here, and I can lower my highlights a little bit, open my shadows up as well, just to bring him back a bit, because when I drop the exposure, we're going back to something that looks a little like the original shot. So I probably don't even need to go that far. I can go to about there. I've lost detail in the highlights here in the water, but I don't think it matters. It gives it a really lively look. It looks alive. You know, you don't have to have every pixel perfect. And I've also now brought back the blacks. So hitting Option or on a Mac or Alt on a PC, just coming in, bringing back the blacks, you can see that we've managed to pull out a lot of detail from that image. And like what I'm doing now is I'm not going for that same look that I had with the images that were lit. I want this to be a bit more balanced, so I can afford to have a brighter background and have a bit more life to this image. So what I really like is seeing these beautiful highlights on the skin, and you also see it on the face. And I just think that it lends itself to being a brighter shot overall, because it's a completely different look. So it's a lot moodier. So I can even afford to just come up a bit more. I want it to look solid, because if I go this way, I think it starts to look blown out. Whereas I do like how his face looks here. I don't like how the background looks. So now it's a matter of just getting the background, so we've got a little bit of tone there. It's not all blown out and white. It feels solid, and now I can come back and individually just bring up the detail on his face to a point where I like it. So I can come in with a brush and maybe just brush in some exposure onto the face. That's obviously too much. And getting it to a point where it looks good. And I can also, and you can almost mimic Flash, the same sort of look. So I can come in and let me just get rid of the shadows. Now this also looks much better if you do the same sort of thing using shadow and highlight and curves in Photoshop, but I just wanted to show you as a basic retouch in Lightroom. So we've got before, overexposed, flat, a bit flary, after, just brought the image back only using Lightroom. And just another trick that I like to do is if I want to make his tummy appear like he's just relaxed there, and so it's just like probably sticking out a little bit, what I can do is just get a new brush, and I'm just going to, I'll just bring the shadows down in that area, and that's just going to darken that area overall. We don't need to be that aggressive. And again, this looks really good in Photoshop using the curves and highlights, but just so you get an idea, you can see that just it can kind of give the impression that there's definition there when it's not. Like, you can even draw abs onto someone if you wanted to, and just go around and enhance, just following along the lines of the body. Just knock the saturation back a little bit as well. So let's have a look. So we got before. Let me just toggle this one on and off. Before, after. So what it's done is it's just, I've brightened it up, and then I've just brought back some of the contrast there in the body. And then the last thing I'll do is just straighten it up. So I like to use this little angle tool here. I can just follow the horizon line, draw a line there, and then Lightroom straightens it up, and there you go. So like, pretty radical difference there, and three completely different ways of shooting and exposing, lighting an image depending on the look that you want to go for.